When you show up, magic happens. When you move your feet, what happens, Johnny? Momentum happens. When you move your feet, momentum happens. You create movement. What happens, Johnny?
Progress, baby. Progress.
Baby.
This little bit every day, and it stacks up, man. It's just the way it works. It's a simple formula, and if people just grab a hold of the simplicity of showing up, life will change, and you see the fruits of your labor very quickly.
That's right. And if you're considering showing up right now and the guy next to you is not, you're already going to be ahead of him. So I encourage you to get your ass up and get moving here this morning. Hey, we got Joey Johnson joining us here, our resident expert. And I know today's conversation is going to be a fun one. I think, Marty, we might have to take Johnny off the stage for this because we're talking about not eating for the next 12 minutes.
Get him out of here.
I know. So Jimmy, let's be careful with how we're going to put Johnny on camera here because we're talking about not eating. And we know that Johnny eats more than I think all of us.
You're gonna enjoy my position on this. You're gonna enjoy my position on this is because here's the thing: is we're talking about fasting, right? If you understand the purpose of fasting and you're doing it for that purpose, then there's not a problem. But most people are doing it and they have no clue why they're doing it. They're doing it because their neighbor's doing it.
Yeah,
so going to lose weight as fast as possible.
Yeah,
it's when any sort of methodology is used for its purpose, I'm going to support it. It's just, do people know? You ask them why they're fasting, they can't fucking tell. Oh, my neighbor did it. And it's almost always because they want to lose weight. Jesus Christ, stop eating McDonald's and you get that job done.
All right, so I haven't updated the button yet, Jory. I'm so sorry. You got the castrated goat on the show here this morning. But
no, that's the female goat. That's the female goat. That's your female goat. That's the one for her.
Hey, Joy, we'll see you on Wednesday.
Joy, tell everybody about fasting and what it's for and how they can use it so they can understand how to use it, please.
I feel like I'm the person that comes in and it's really like knocking down the magic around these things.
I'm a hope killer for our show.
Until Jory came up. Here's the deal. I totally agree with you, Joe. If we need to put this in simple terms, let's go back to what every single show has led to. Make better choices.
Yeah.
But let's go to what does science say about intermittent fasting real quick. The science says we're not sure. The science says we know how it works in rats.
Okay.
So if we're looking at 6 rats versus hundreds of humans, we don't have that support yet. Now, it doesn't say that just because we're leaping ahead of the science that some of this isn't actually going to be evidence-based, legit stuff. But I think that we as humans are jumping a little bit too soon because intermittent fasting can be, from what we can see so far, a way to keep calories in check. If the goal is to decrease the what to and what not to eat, intermittent fasting is perfect because you've got this chunk of time, however you want to set it up, 5, 2, 16, 48, whatever, however you want to set it up. It's at the end of the day restricting caloric intake. Now, if your goal is just weight loss and you don't care about body composition.
Yes. So, Joy, is this as much semantics with words for human beings? So as last 10, 15 years, as we've all been in it, as the world has changed to social media and everybody's an expert, everybody can open up their phone and everybody becomes an expert, right? We've all grown up with break fast. So in many ways, humans have grown up with, okay, we have our dinner at 5, 6 o'clock, and then we're not supposed to eat until the morning again. So in many ways, we've all grown up with this ideology of breaking fast in the morning. But then somewhere along the way, and I think it's going with this, as social has become last 20 years, we're all experts. And then intermittent fasting became a thing. And I was like, okay, you sleep for 8 hours, you don't eat for 18. And then all of a sudden, we don't talk breakfast anymore. We talk about intermittent fast now. When all we're really talking about is just deciding when you're not going to eat and when you're going to eat. So I'll share my own personal experience. I intermittent fast. What that means for me is that my last meal in the evening, whatever it's going to be, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock before I go to bed, I won't eat again today till probably 4 o'clock. But it works for me. I train on an empty stomach. I ran this morning. I lift. I know John is cringing probably, but it works for me. It makes me feel, it feels good for me. And I think that's the point. And that's for my goal. Yeah. That's the goal, isn't it, Johnny? Is that it works for me. It's not about what's up for Johnny. It's what works for Keith. John, lean into that because some people like you are always like, I've got to do what Jory said or I got to do what John said.
I think there's pretty much everything we talk about is here's these concepts and you take these concepts, you find your individual formula, you put them together, you twist them, you make it work for you. And that's what we're looking for because just because I do it this way doesn't mean everybody should do it this way. It means they should look at what I do and take what works for them and leave what doesn't behind. But one thing about the intermittent fasting that I want to bring into this that very rarely hear people talk about, and Jory, please correct me if I've got the number of hours incorrect, but I believe it's 8. Once the digestion has stopped working for 8 hours, the body goes into this mode of getting rid of toxicity. And so once you, I think it's 8 hours. Once you cross that barrier, the body goes into kind of hyper getting rid of toxicity mode, which now if somebody says, hey, I'm going to use this because I want to detox, I want to keep my body healthy and clean, that makes sense to me. If somebody says, I'm doing it because I'm having a hard time limiting my caloric intake, that makes sense to me. But just give me a reason that you're doing it that actually applies to you rather than your fucking neighbor who did it in XYZ. So, Joy, was I correct with 8 hours? Once the digestion is shut, not working after the 8 hour mark, it starts going into hyper get rid of toxicity mode?
If we look like overall, right? So once we've stopped, then the body can actually relax and chill and recover. That's why we sleep, right? The body can actually repair itself. And so if we're constantly feeding all the time, the body's constantly working at figuring out, okay, so this sort's over here. We got to sort the laundry, right? And so that's what the body's constantly doing. And when you give it a break, a little vacation, a little R&R, it can actually start to build and repair itself and just chill. We've got functioning kidneys, liver. Our body knows what to do when we are in a healthy state. Not everybody's healthy. So that's true. The other part I want to bring into this, though, is the social aspect of intermittent fasting. Now, there's a few things in there, and I'll try not to overtake because I can be quite chatty. And so I'll try to make sure
we love it, Jory.
We're doing it. But there's a few things that I've seen in my 20 plus years of my careers that we got to be careful with this because, one, what's it teaching the people around us? If you've got teens, kids, they pick up on things really fast, right? Yeah. So looking at if you're intermittent fasting for an outcome, not religious reasons, for an outcome for a body change, we have to be very careful when we're doing this. So I've worked with clients that like to intermittent fast. I like eating way too much. But there are people that really enjoy the intermittent fasting. It brings them some control.
And clarity.
Right? So that's cool. But then I say, okay, so you've got little eyes watching you. Could you do this from like after supper to kids? You're helping kids get sorted out, and then you go to your regime of fueling and your why around that. We want to be careful. There's also a huge population, males and females, who just typically have labeled it as a female thing, but we know it's not, is that you've grown up with disordered eating and an eating disorder. So intermittent fasting will never be okay for someone who has an eating disorder background.
Yeah, it makes it worse.
It makes it
worse. 100%.
Yeah, anxiety goes
100%.
up. There's the loss of control. And
sorry, I got to just jump in. I so love what you said a minute ago about people need to hear this. If you're intermittent fasting, you're not eating breakfast and you're grazing, eating shit at night, and you have kids, you're teaching them to do this terrible habits. What that you need to do is eat dinner and have some discipline and not eat for the last 4 hours you're awake. That's what you should be teaching them. Start your fast before you go to sleep. Rather than eating a bunch of bullshit, processed foods until you go to sleep and waking up and not eating breakfast, your kids don't give a shit what you say. They care what you do. And if you live that bad, you are giving it to them, and that's terribly unhealthy.
Yeah. So I love this conversation. As a matter of fact, I think we may even want to keep it going for the rest of the week. I think we can dig into a number of different ways about it because I have intermittent fasted. I did a 7-day fast. I know Johnny would argue that because I included the MCT oil in my coffee that I wasn't fasting, and I can respect that. But I did a 7-day just drank coffee fast. And
they just call that an MCT oil fast.
Yes, exactly. But what I thoroughly enjoyed out of it, Marty, what I thoroughly enjoyed out of fasting, Jory, is I enjoy the clarity it gives me. It really does. I know people maybe can't understand it, but I have a clear mind when I'm not eating. Like I don't feel foggy. I don't feel like I don't have a decision to make. I'm like, okay, I'm not eating. And that's just what works for me. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but it works.
And that's such a great thing because some people argue, oh, I'm not eating. So my body's doing this thing to my focus. Or how about you've just fucking made a decision? You don't have to worry about that for a while. And so you're able to see things more clearly because food normally is this little fucking voice that fucks with us all goddamn day. You stick a sock in that son of a bitch's mouth, all of a sudden you see clearly. Am I right, Jory?
I love your analogies. It allows for some people, and it's like same thing as caffeine can be performance enhancing for some people.
Yes.
And it's like anxiety escalating for others. So just like anything else, a workout program, the way you choose to fuel and nourish your body needs to be personalized. And we talked last time about periodization. Is this the right time for you to implement fasting?
Yes.
Are you going through some family challenges? Are you going through a really important project at work that is really escalating your stress response? Maybe that's not the best time, right? So I would say periodize, personalize, and do a little check of your why. And let's get the dysfunction out of being out of it and let's look at health, wellness, and performance on demand.
This is
But,
awesome.
the one element that we did not touch on, which this is the one thing that I'll be totally in support of, and if this applies to plenty of topics other than fasting, but it promotes discipline.
Yes.
You have to decide, I'm not going to fucking eat until whatever time.
Yes.
And when you make a choice and you execute that, it builds discipline. And what we need is discipline, because motivation is fucking great, but we all lose our motivation. Discipline is doing the shit that you need to do when you don't want to do it. And if fasting helps you with your discipline, there's a positive for sure.
Oh, I like that, Johnny. So you know what we're going to do, Jory, when we come back on Wednesday, I'd like to continue the conversation on fasting, but let's work on how somebody can get started with it. So because when I made that choice years ago, I didn't know how to get into it. I just started, and then you can learn. But somebody's like, I'm thinking about it. How do I start? Do I not eat for a week? Do I not eat for 4 hours? What do I eat when I eat? When do I break fast? But let's get into that key, because this affects a lot of people, and a lot of people, I believe, are curious about it, want to learn about it, and I think we can keep educating about it. So on Wednesday, when we come back with Jory in the protein break, let's talk about how we can get started at intermittent fasting and how we can teach discipline around that. Jory, final word to you before we wrap up today.
So yeah, I think great. Let's continue the conversation, but let's remember that this isn't for everyone.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I look at the individual. If someone has poor blood sugar control, they have actual type 1. If you're pregnant, there are certain reasons why we're going to say, let's not even go there right now. But yeah, I think it's still, everything has to be personalized, and some things will work. And just really, what's your intention? What's the outcome that you want out of it? And is it sustainable for you? And it looks like it is for you, Keith, but for others, it creates other havoc. So is it sustainable? And you don't know until you try. So yeah, let's go into, there's so many ways to intermittent fast.
And you said something which struck me, because I got to be honest, I've thought about it, but I didn't really think about it again until you raised it a few moments ago. But what are our kids seeing as we're going through intermittent fasting? And I remember a friend of mine, saying that she was counting her macros during her life, and she saw her kids watching her macro counting, and she stopped. Because she's like, wait a minute, I don't want my kids growing up thinking that I got to count how many fucking carbohydrates are in my cauliflower. That was quite striking to me, because she changed the way she did things in front of her kids. Because as Johnny said, it's what our kids see instead of what our kids tell us. And so what we tell our kids, right? So that was striking to me as well, right? It was teaching our kids.
Should not be intermittent fasting.
No.
I agree.
Intermittent fast. So counting macros. Yes. Jory, thanks for hanging out with us today. Great conversation. Really great conversation. Jory back on Wednesday. Jory's always here for the protein break. You go and have an awesome day, Jory, and I'll come knock on your door maybe later today. We can talk more about the League of Business Athletes.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right,
Thank you guys. I appreciate you all.
Have a great day, Jory. Great to see you
Wednesday.